Since it opened in 1968, Sonoma Raceway has challenged many of the world's best road racers. 32 years ago, it hosted the first ever World Challenge event, and this weekend it is the site of Round 1 of the Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. Hello and welcome to California Wine Country. My name is Ryan Marine. Amanda Busick will be reporting from the pit lane. Ordinarily, I'd have my partner Calvin Fish alongside, but some argy-bargy with some kidney stones has him stuck at home. Looking forward to having Calvin alongside at Circuit of the Americas for round 2 of the championship. Filling in ably will be a voice familiar to fans of GT World Challenge Europe, John Watson, a 5-time Grand Prix winner and a runner-up in the 1987 World Sports Car Championship. We'll hear from John in just a moment, but first, let's take a tour of this Sonoma Raceway track layout with Wright Motorsports driver Jan Halen and our Porsche track preview.
Hi, my name is Jan Halen. We're here at Sonoma Raceway with Wright Motorsports for the Porsche track preview. We're getting ready to start the lap, coming onto the front straightaway here. Up through the gears, all the way to 6th gear, up to 145 mile an hour. It's the fastest part of the track. Very bumpy, going uphill, braking into turn 2. Down to 2nd gear, car gets very light here on the exit. Accelerating out, getting ready for turn 3. Lots of compression at the apex of 3 here. 85 mile an hour, 3rd gear, back to power. Car again getting very light on the exit and hard on the brakes for turn 4. 1st or 2nd gear, accelerating out, getting ready for the carousel, up the hill, very tricky braking. 4th gear, down to 3rd, car again getting light on the brakes, and then preparing for a good exit onto the back straightaway. 3rd, back through the gears, 5th gear, all the way up to 140 mile an hour, and then hard on the brakes for the hairpin, down to 2nd, back to power. Car slides around a ton here. So, got to be careful how to apply the power. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, getting ready for the S's. Small lift only, back to power, and ready for the S's. Hard on the brakes here at the 300. Lots of dust flying up here. Hard on the curbs, back to power, 1st gear, back to power. Sweeping right, flat out, getting ready for the last corner. Tight hairpin, 1st gear. All about getting a good exit here. Good rotation, hard back to power, and back onto the front straightaway. And that was a lap at Sonoma Raceway in the Porsche GT3R.
That was a high-speed tour of this Sonoma Raceway facility. Not only is this the first round of the season for the GT World Challenge America, but also the Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS, a global championship for manufacturers. You can see the manufacturers involved on the screen right here. They will be competing for points in each of the 4 SRO Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS championships here in the States, in Europe, in Asia, and in Australia. Porsche, AMG, Lamborghini, BMW, Ferrari, and others will be competing throughout the course of the season for top honors. Really an interesting championship, and great to get things started here at Sonoma Raceway. My pleasure now to bring in John Watson to the broadcast. John, this is a track that is near and dear to your heart and should prove to be a real challenge for all involved today.
Well, good afternoon, Ryan. Thank you very much. Delighted to be back at Sonoma Raceway. When I came here in 1985, initially it was Sears Point. And, of course, it's in the heart of the wine country, close to my heart as well. But a lovely little racetrack, going to be very exciting this afternoon. And what we're going to have a look at very shortly is this is the track map of this 12-corner circuit. Segment 1 finishes on the exit of turn 5, Sector 2 on the run down into the chicane, and then the final sector at the start-finish line. 4.056 kilometers, 2.505 miles. Difficult circuit to overtake on, an easy circuit to defend on. It tests the driver's not just his skill, his ability to work out how can I best find a way past a competitive car, or in some cases, and I know this to my regret, back in 1986 trying to catch and overtake a back marker, I made a mistake in the carousel, ran wide, spun the car out of the race. Well, enough said. All I can say is enough said.
Well, if it happened to John, it's proof it can happen to the best of us. And we have many of the finest GT racers in the world on site here this weekend. The return of the pro class, crucial in this championship. Really excited to see that. The K-Pax racing team fielding a couple of pro class entries. More on that in a moment, but let's get down to Amanda Busick, who's patrolling pit lane. And she's got a number of our protagonists to speak to before we get started.
I am King Akim Jofer, and you are the heir to the throne of Zamunda.
Yes, my son.
Oh, I do. And Ron, John, it's so great to be hanging out here with you guys today, especially here on pit lane, catching up with Robbie Foley, who kicks off their effort here in Sonoma. You were talking to your teammate Michael prior to our interview. What tips did you give to him?
Yeah, just a couple of things. He's new to the car, so his first race with the M6, just getting him used to all the systems and things like that. Giving him a couple of tips just to get through the start. He's driven a GT3 car before, but never raced it, so it's going to be new to him a little bit. Yeah, he's got a good approach, and we'll see how we do.
So you guys will kick off from the second row. You know the starts here at Sonoma are really crucial to success. What's the strategy for you guys?
Yeah, well, I think first to get through the first race of the year, you want to have a safe start. So that's the goal for Michael is to, if he can get a position. Track position here is very important. It's tough to pass, but also we just want to get through the first race cleanly as a team and, have a good start to the year.
Well, best of luck, Robbie. And as we continue down on pit lane here, last year that team actually won in the GT4 class. They're going to get an effort here in GT3. Well, another team making their first effort in GT3, the GT World Challenge, is Ian Lacey Racing. Drew is going to be piloting that here today. And Drew, you guys start from the back of the grid here today. What challenges is your team going to face?
Oh, everything's new. Switching to the GT3, Aston Martin has been a great experience, but we started late, unfortunately. So this weekend is more of a test weekend for our team. Our Ian Lacey guys, GT3 guys, have been working really hard, and unfortunately, we are getting stuff as we speak. Like, we just got some very essential equipment a couple hours ago. So it's a test weekend, and so far so good. Wish we were a little further up, but we will be there.
Best of luck. And as we carry down pit lane here, guys, it's the 32nd showing for the GT World Challenge here for their season kicking off. This year, right here in Sonoma, it is a very difficult track to kick off, as we saw through practice the last couple of days, even in qualifying. One of the teams that had a bit of a mishap was the team with Giacomo Altuve, who we're going to talk to. I talked to him a little bit off camera. He said he was really disappointed with how that effort went. They will also start from the back half of the field today and know that they're going to have some ground to make up. But all the drivers here are super excited to get this season started. You can feel the energy on this pit lane. People kicking their foot, shaking their head, putting their helmets on, slapping it, all with excitement. It's my first year with the series. I can't wait to share this alongside Ryan and John. It's nice to share the afternoon with you as well. But it's going to be an exciting race day here today. And with Giacomo, as we approach him and his team, TR3 Racing. Giacomo, we talked a little bit off camera about the struggles you guys had in qualifying. How can you correct that here during race day?
Unfortunately, we had an electrical issue that compromised a bit our qualifying, so this is a bit of bad luck, but now we changed everything. The car is good, the team is pushing to do the best result possible, so we are confident.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Great to have you as part of the broadcast team. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the longtime voice of the series, Greg Kramer, who has meant so much to so many in this paddock. And Greg, I know you're watching, and certainly appreciate all of your contributions over the years. We'll do our best to live up to the standard that you helped to set. Cars rolling here shortly. It'll be 2 formation laps, John. These cars in GT World Challenge America do use tire warmers, but it is an important time to make sure you bring these tire temps up and tire pressures up to be ready to go at the start of this race.
Yes, the cars are making their way now onto the circuit behind the Lamborghini Urus. That's the safety car running at a very low pace right now, and that's not going to really do very much to keep the temperature that they may have had in the tire when they fitted them to them in the pit lane. So Andrea Caldarelli will start, and he was the dominant car driver in Q1 and qualified in a 1 minute 36.186. Alongside him is sister car Corey Lewis, 136.8. So right now, you have to say the money would be on Andrea Caldarelli. He is in a form, the king of Lamborghini Huracan GT3s. He just decimated everybody in 2019, and he's got the magic setup for the Lamborghini. And the K-Pax team, adapting from the mid-front engine Bentleys to the mid-rear engine Lamborghinis, that hasn't taken them very long.
No, it has not at all. Here on home turf, that team located very near to this circuit in part of the industrial park attached to Sonoma Raceway, and the combination of their expertise and a couple of Lamborghini factory drivers. They've got Jordan Pepper, who raced for them in the Bentley last year, coming over as well. Corey Lewis, who has been part of the Lamborghini Young Driver program over the last several years. A lot of Super Trofeo experience as well as GT3 experience. All these things have come together, and the opening salvo, John, it was pretty impressive what K-Pax was able to do. A sweep of the front row for race one in poles in both races this weekend.
Yes, and I think that what showed through to me in the case certainly of Andrea Caldarelli is his knowledge and experience of the car. He knows the Lamborghini inside out. Now, track conditions in qualifying were quite different to where they are now. The ambient was much lower, track temperature was much lower. It was a lot trickier. There had been overnight rain, so the track was also washed. In other words, we had a very green racetrack, and it took a little bit of time to get some rubber down, not as much as maybe the drivers would like to know that they've got that level of confidence to lean on the car on every one of these 12 corners. Nevertheless, that black number 3 Lamborghini, Andrea Caldarelli, dominant in qualifying one.
It was a stirring performance, to say the least, and one we've come to expect from Andrea Caldarelli. He'll line up alongside his teammate Corey Lewis. I mentioned the return of the Pro Class after 1 year away, and 4 takers for the Pro Class here, at least for the opening round of the championship. The 2 K-Pax Lamborghinis, but then row number 2 as well, Windward Racing, with Russell Ward starting the race. He'll be joined by Philip Ellis, Michael Dine, and his teammate Robbie Foley, we heard from a moment ago. He'll start the Turner BMW on the outside of the second row, and then we get into what is a really stout Pro-Am field. The pros, we saw how good they were in qualifying for race 2, mixing it up with the all-pro class cars. But the AMs also, this is pro racing. These are pro teams that take this very seriously. These AMs take their racing very seriously. They're going to have a great fight amongst themselves, and when they turn the cars over to the pros after the mandatory pit stop, John, it's going to be letting the cat out amongst the pigeons. Those pros further back, they want to get to the front. They like the class win, yes, but if they have a chance for an overall win, they're going to take it.
Well, we're looking at one of the Mercedes just coming into picture now, George Kurtz, in an earlier event here this afternoon in GT America. He led the race, got a penalty for jumping the start, clawed his way back through the field and won the race. Now that's a Pro-Am car. Keep an eye on that number 4 DXDT Mercedes-Benz. George Kurtz did an outstanding job behind the wheel a couple of hours earlier. The man must have mega stamina to do a 1 hour race, go on our way, have a few minutes to be dressed, and then get back into the car and start all over again. But certainly the action at the front is going to be between those 4 pro cars, and certainly the BMW and the Mercedes on the second row of the grid are more than capable in these more fair conditions of taking the challenge to those 2 K-Pax Lamborghinis.
That's certainly on their mind as this race goes along. A moment ago, we saw a look at Erin Vogel at the back of this field. She had contact in her qualifying run. She has to start at the back, but she and her teammate Michael Cooper have been extremely fast in the build-up to this event. Part of a 3-car DXDT racing stable. There's George Kurtz in the 04, and he'll be out there with David Askew, the team owner and teammate of that Mercedes team. Windward Racing actually running the previous generation Mercedes-AMG, not the Evo. They will be starting in 3rd with Russell Ward. This is the same team that won its class at the 24 Hours of Daytona back in January. There's a look at Jan Halen, that's actually Fred Pordat, Jan Halen's teammate. The car, though, that gave us our tour around Sonoma Raceway on the Porsche Track Preview. It's a great grid, plenty of stories, and 90 minutes to tell them. The Lamborghini Urus safety car pulls off into the pit lane. And now it's down to our pole sitter, Andrea Caldarelli for K-Pax Racing, to lead this Lamborghini 1-2 to the green flag. Field in good alignment out of turn 11. Looking to the starter stand to get the 2021 season underway. And they accelerate away. 2021 GT World Challenge America has started. It's already 3 wide further back. A big move from Rodrigo Salas in the Compass Racing Acura. Up front, it's the black Lamborghini around the green one to settle the lead. Good start from Michael Dinan in his first ever GT3 start. He runs third, but look at those Lamborghinis making good their escape here early on.
Yeah, as you can just see, the Mercedes coming through turn 3, hard twitchy, the car feels. So tires still not up to temperature, probably not even up to pressure. A big start from Salas on contact, and oh my goodness, George Kurtz gets hit up the back. The man who won that race earlier in the day has been turn 4 tagged from behind, but already Andrea Caldarelli has pulled out what the best part of almost a second on Corey Lewis in the sister K-Pax Lamborghini. BMW third. The Pro-Am Honda managing hip and shoulder to get through. Now, there's the start, leading 2 cars going in. Can we see who hit the back of George Kurtz? There
it was
there.
the team car.
Oh, it was the sister Mercedes.
Wow, that's David Askew, the team owner, who got into the back of George Kurtz there. They had it coming together, I believe it was at VIR last year, so it's not the first time. Oh, Road America, I'm being told. So not the first time that this has happened. Keep an eye on that. The good news for George Kurtz, he knows he can come back from the back of the field to win. It happened, as John mentioned, in the GT America race a little bit earlier on today. This is that Compass Racing Acura NSX GT3 Evo. Great start from Rodrigo Salas, who's coming under some pressure here from Russell Ward in the Winward Racing Mercedes-AMG GT3. That's right there in line behind as they complete the first lap. It's Caldarelli up ahead, leading this thing by 1.2 seconds over his teammate Corey Lewis, Michael Dinan, Rodrigo Salas, Russell Ward, your top 5. David Askew running 6th, but we do have to wonder what might come of that penalty, or of that contact, and if the stewards might take a look at that one.
Yes, I mean, it looks as if Askew just misjudged the breaking down the hill into turn 4, but that's an issue for the stewards to address. Also, they may look at Salas because he was certainly on the move before he crossed the start-finish line, and if he was adjudged to have been a little bit eager in making a start, whether he got alongside the row 2 cars or not needs to be examined. But now under pressure from Ward in the Mercedes and having to go slightly defensive. This is the difficulty that you face. You get a run out of the carousel, up the hill, up to turn 7 and then 7A, but it's never quite enough racetrack to get the pass done.
From your experience racing here, John, as we look, George Kurtz has brought that car to pit lane. Perhaps there was some damage stemming from that contact. It looks like they're going to change the right rear. DXDT Racing crew having a look at the suspension. This is the car he shares with Colin Brown. It's a different chassis, by the way, than the one that was used for GT America earlier on today. Back to this battle here between Ward and Salas. And to my point I was making earlier, John, your experience racing here, albeit a slightly different track layout, where did you find the opportunities existed to make an overtake if you had that chance present itself?
Primarily out of turn 1 up into turn 2, if you felt brave enough, because it was pretty quick in those IMSA GTV prototypes that I was racing. The other part of the racetrack would be into turn 12, which is the hairpin at the end of the lap. Now, we had a slightly different track because when we left turn 7 at the top of the circuit, we didn't have the chicane. That was introduced a number of years ago. But likewise, the run down into turn 4 was a longer run. It was further on. You can actually see, well, look here, as the cars go right, they're going right sooner than we did. We kept going straight on down. The racetrack is actually just behind where the cars are now going through turn 5. A couple of places, but you've got to be committed and you've got to be alongside the car you want to overtake before you get to the corner. You can't dive bomb somebody and expect them to give you room.
It's been an interesting opening 5 minutes. This is a look here at Jeff Burton racing with Fred Poordad. We saw a moment ago George Kurtz resume the race, but down a lap. He was right in the midst of some of these battles we're looking at here. So they've got a big mountain to climb if they're going to get back into this thing. Fred Pordad, last year's GT World Challenge America and class champion, right now holding down that spot with Jeff Burton in tow. Jeff Burton, another one of those drivers who was racing in GT America earlier on today, perhaps using some of that track knowledge to his advantage as we drop back and look at the Racer's Edge car. Taylor Hagler behind the wheel at the moment, getting a lot of pressure from Aaron Vogel, a couple of female drivers in the field, and they find each other right away. Both of them new to GT3 racing, but extensive experience racing in smaller category GT cars and touring cars as well. Here's the 91. That's Burton. And then Hagler right behind with Dakota Dickerson as a teammate. Mentioned the issues for Aaron Vogel back in qualifying. She's definitely looking aggressive here. Did not let that get to her. Had some contact, I believe, with the car that she's chasing, actually. And it did some serious bodywork damage to the left front of that car. It didn't seem like it was anything worse than that because Michael Cooper was able to go out and take part in qualifying too. Nevertheless, their qualifying efforts were effectively scuppered at that point, and that means they've got a lot of work ahead of them to try and come back through this field. That's David Askew. Is this perhaps a drive-through, or did something else happen?
Well, certainly he had to go to the pit lane. We didn't see him stop and make any change to the car. It may have been a penalty that has not been, we have not had notification of that. But certainly the incident in turn 4 on the opening lap, and there's the number 9 Lamborghini, and that's had serious impact from behind, and that is a great shame. The TR3 Racing Lamborghini, we were talking about that a little earlier with Giacomo Alto, and he will be, well, that looks like the end of the race for that particular Lamborghini. Heavy impact on the rear, so it may be more than just superficial bodywork damage. It could potentially be suspension, even worse, transmission.
And it looked like perhaps that rear wing had been knocked off as well. Ziad Gondor behind the wheel of that car. It's a team that has extensive Ferrari experience. This is its first year running Lamborghinis, and they've got a pretty aggressive plan running Lamborghinis here, running some Super Trofeo racing as well. Not off to a great start, and unfortunately we won't get to see Giacomo Altoe, a name that maybe isn't all that familiar to race fans here in the States, but on your side of the pond, John, he's made a real name for himself.
Yes, I mean, he's a number of European drivers, particularly with the Lamborghini background, who are racing in Europe, coming over here to the United States to compete in the various rounds over here and being drafted in the Pro and the Pro-Am lineup. So many of these drivers are what we would call centrally contracted to one or another manufacturer, and they get placed by the manufacturer in the variety of championships that they want to then hopefully succeed. So Pro-Am led by Fred Pordad, and he's under pressure from the Lamborghini.
That's Jeff Burton getting closer and closer, but first we saw David Askew make his way down pit lane a moment ago. Amanda has more on that story.
Yeah, as we were in anticipation of whether a penalty or not was coming, I went over and tapped Ryan Dial and asked if he was anticipating that as well, and he shot back and said, "We already got it." I asked him what the strategy will be now, and he said, "We got to go really, really fast."
Well, the good news is they've got a pretty angry driver behind the wheel, I have to believe, and going fast, that's what race car drivers do. So David Askew will be back on it, but it's especially costly because it was a couple of teammates that were affected, and now that means that this GXDT racing car at the back of this train is going to probably have to carry the torch for the team despite starting at the back of the field. Aaron Vogel has been really racy to this point. Looked like maybe wanting to make a move to the inside in turn 11, thought better of it, and the battle continues between Aaron and Taylor Hagler. They're trying to chase down that Pordad-Burton fight we were talking about a moment ago. This is really good stuff here. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the Pro-Am category, all in this camera shot.
Yeah, and Aaron Vogel and the Mercedes all over the back of the Acura as they thread their way up through the field back to race leader. He's got a 4.1 second advantage over his teammate, Corey Lewis. So the K-Pax Lamborghinis are doing, I suspect, what we most thought would happen. They're dictating the pace right now. But, of course, we've got an hour and 20 of racing. We've got a driver change to come. All we need is a full course yellow or a safety car intervention. That advantage will just evaporate as we go back So the Acura coming through turn 7 and then 7A. So these are the battles. This is for third and fourth, BMW and Mercedes-Benz. Really, this is where they anticipated being from the start. It was just that the pesky Acura of Salas got in between them.
Had a great start, did Rodrigo Salas. Separated these guys for a while, but now Michael Dinan feeling the pressure. His first ever GT3 start, and he's trying to fend off a 24 Hours of Daytona class winner from earlier this year, Russell Ward, who has done a lot of racing in the past few years here in the States with this Windward Racing team. They bought famed Mercedes team HTP a couple of years ago and have had an extensive presence racing in Europe as well, primarily at the Nürburgring, but some SRO championships, some other endurance racing, and they carried some of that expertise from HTP over to the States, and it's really been a great package. Russell has improved his driving quite a bit and seems to be coming into his own here in the last couple of seasons.
Just watching these two cars, their weaknesses and strengths, arguably, Ward in the Mercedes has got the car that's potentially quicker in a lap, but what is clear is that the BMW has got speed in a straight line and is always able to pull that extra couple of car lengths on these relatively short straights here at Sonoma Raceway, and that is a frustration if you're pursuing a car which you know is not maybe as quick in a race lap, but you can't get the job done because it's fast where it counts, and that's in a straight line.
Well, right on cue, Race Vision powered by AWS backs up what you picked up with your eyes there, John. Michael Dinan, the fastest top speed so far recorded, 139.8 miles per hour. Let's compare that to the third car on the list, actually tied with Rodrigo Salas, so those top two effectively the same, but that's a pretty big difference between the two, keeping in mind that Ward has had the benefit of the slipstream, where Dinan has not, and yet Dinan still has that straight line edge.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it just every time he comes off a corner, he just leapfrogs that little distance enough to frustrate Ward. Ward, of course, you can see under brakes closes up, but the BMW's on the throttle that little bit earlier. And I've seen this throughout the previous season, racing in Europe, racing in South Africa. In South Africa, the BMW was it was a real horse. It was unbelievable at straight line performance. And we're seeing again a repeat of that. Ward doing all he can to find a way, and you have to sit back and not get into the pace of the car that you're following. Maybe just drop back a second or so and then build up your own natural speed. Don't let your momentum be dictated by the car you're following.
Some more fantastic data from our friends at AWS. This is corner speeds through the carousel. This corner they're heading through now, and you can see the cornering advantage of that Mercedes there, with the top two on that list being Mercedes-AMG GT3s, Russell Ward at the top of that list. So these two cars very similar in lap time, but they make them in different ways, and I think it's fascinating the renaissance we've seen from this BMW M6 GT3. A few years ago, I think the consensus was it's long in the tooth, its day has passed it, but thanks in part to the SRO BOP, thanks in part to the work that the various BMW teams have put in, we've seen it have great success here in the last couple of years, most notably a win at the Nürburgring 24 last year. We saw a win and a 1-2 at the Indianapolis 8-hour, part of the Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli. Strong run at Kyalami as well. And it seems like there's a new lease on life for this car, although we know that the M4 GT3 is on the way very, very soon, at the end of this season, in fact.
Well, I think the reason why we're keeping this BMW M6 competitive is simply, as you mentioned, Ryan, is the balance of performance. The essence of these championships is not to reward the kind of technical excellence that you might find in Formula One. It's to provide entertaining motorsport and to allow every manufacturer their day on the victor's podium. And what BMW and the teams that run the BMW have achieved is a car that is very effective indeed. As it happens, and we saw the lap times, corner speeds in carousel, the Mercedes-Benz that's chasing the BMW 5 miles an hour quicker through the carousel. And even with that advantage, he couldn't get the job done running up from the carousel up into turn 7. And that's the nature here of Sonoma Raceway. You've got to think it through. It's not easy to overtake. Sometimes it might come when you're up against catching back markers. You might use that to your advantage. but you have to be always looking forward, not just the corner that you're in, the corner that's coming up next down the road.
Well, Aaron Vogel, we saw the graphic a moment ago, up 6 spots already in this race. The best mover to this point, 15 minutes in. But we've got an update on Ferrari from Amanda in pit lane.
We were up until 2 o'clock last night working to get this Ferrari back for track ready. JC Sada has already gained 2 positions in race day. They feel like they gained really good data from qualifying. Guys, they are just relieved to be racing today.
Yeah, if you saw that car after the incident, it happened in practice 1 yesterday. They did not get on track for practice 2. It was in pieces. They were going to extreme measures to try and make sure things were pointed in the right direction. The good news is, if you're going to have an incident like that, having a team like AF Corsa to work on the car, they're as accomplished as they come. And they had to put that expertise to use, John, but good sign here that car has been able to run cleanly, first through qualifying a couple of sessions there, and then the first 15 minutes of this race.
Indeed, I mean, the amount of work was so large that they weren't able to paint the door, the right-hand door, on that Ferrari because it's still in carbon black. It's not important. You've got to focus on the things that are going to make the car work, and whether the door on the right-hand side matches the door on the left-hand side is irrelevant. But that was the level of commitment that the team put in to get that car back onto the racetrack here for Saturday's race.
Andrea Caldarelli leading the field after about 16 minutes of competition. 6.2 seconds to lead over the sister K-Pax racing car, Corey Lewis. Not quite the level of experience in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo of the man he's chasing, Andrea Caldarelli. John, you made reference to the 2019 season that Andrea had. A championship for the Orange One FFF racing team alongside Marco Morpelli, won both the Sprint and Endurance Cups of GT World Challenge Europe. That had never been done before. It was a remarkable season for those two, and really, Andrea has been able to carry that on ever since then. He's a man highly regarded for his prowess behind the wheel of a Lamborghini. As Ward takes a look to the inside, Dynan maybe got caught looking in the mirrors just a little bit, slid wide, got in the dust, and that lets Russell Ward slip through. He's up to the 3rd spot overall and in the pro class.
Yeah, I think what Dynan did is he saw the Mercedes in his mirror, thinking, is he going to shoot down the inside in a gap that might be marginal? I'll give him that little bit of extra room. But in the process, he put himself into that very dirty part of the exit of the corner. All of a sudden, tyres are all clogged up with the dust and dirt on the outside, loses grip, can do nothing, just has to wait until the car comes back onto line. In the meantime, Russell Ward says, thank you very much. I'll take that every day and any day you want to give it to me. And I'm now in 3rd place. And I'm now going to focus that I'm 21.4 seconds behind Corey Lewis in 2nd place. That's a lot of time Russell Ward's got to drag out of that Mercedes-Benz, or I could say Mercedes-AMG GT3.
Well, we saw Russell Ward in the championship a few times last year. He raced in a couple of different classes, as a matter of fact. Raced alongside his dad, Bryce, and also Chris Wilson in the Pro-Am class. Ran in the silver class from time to time, picked up some podiums along the way. Never got that breakthrough for a win, however, but nevertheless threw in some good performances and showed the development that he has made as a driver. Still a young guy, but not someone that necessarily set out for a pro racing career really early on. Nevertheless, has rounded into a solid driver, solid enough that this driver lineup is listed as all-pro, which speaks volumes for what the series thinks of him and based on his accomplishments around the world. Right here, we look at a Porsche versus BMW fight. Here is Taylor Hadler going back around Aaron Vogel, and Aaron just pulled to the inside to let that happen. That's very curious indeed.
I think Aaron's got an issue because she stayed way on the right-hand side of the racetrack. No reason to do that because she wasn't under threat from the Acura. I don't know why she hasn't come into the pit lane, so whatever the cause or the problem is, she's dealing with it right now. But certainly her pace on this lap, which is coming up to complete the end of lap 11, and you can see how much more slowly the car comes on start. There's clearly a technical issue with her Mercedes-AMG GT3, and is that she's certainly offline. That's where the dust was coming from underneath the rear, the diffuser of the car. But the pace of this 19 Mercedes is certainly off the pace that we saw Aaron provide us with. You wonder, is the car leaning on that left rear? Here it is, pulls off to the right-hand side of the track, coming down. I wonder, does she think that she may have a left rear tyre deflating? Doesn't look like it's doing so in turn 4, but the pace has just evaporated.
I'll say this, it looked like the Pirelli logo on the left front had been rubbed off. We didn't see the striping around the outside, at least to my eye, so maybe she made some contact with something. It is curious that she didn't make her way down to the pit lane. I'm not quite sure what would have caused that. Hopefully we can get an update from someone down in the pit lane here momentarily. But a real shame. Aaron Vogel showed great promise at the start of this race, up 6 spots in the first 15 minutes. Unfortunately, it seems to be all for naught, and what a disappointing start to the season for DXDT Racing. They had 2 teammates collide, Askew and Kurtz. Both of them are well down the order. Vogel was carrying the flag for the team and now seems to have problems of her own. And for a team that made massive investments in the offseason, moved into a brand new facility in North Carolina, moving all the way from Utah, this is not the way they drew up the start to their year.
Brian, Aaron is back at speed. Whatever the problem was, she may have been able to make some adjustments in the cockpit. There are a multitude of buttons or switches, but there she's in the pit lane now. She did pick up speed on the lap that she's now come into the pit lane from, so whatever the problem is, she did get a momentary fix on it, but decided to bring the car. Now that might have been an instruction from the pit lane rather than her making that decision, but she is in the pit lane, and that good work that she established in the opening laps is now, sadly, for nothing.
Maybe we can get some clue as to what the issue is based on what the team does. What does...
Well, I'm not quite sure what happened there. It looked like the car was still in gear, and then it got stalled. So a little bit of communication going on between the crew and the driver. We'll go back to this battle between Fred Purdad and Jeff Burton in the Lamborghini, and really Burton has not been able to do anything at all, anywhere around the lap, through any of the 12 corners and the straights that connect them, to put himself into a position.
And while these two battle it out, let's get down to the pit lane. I think Amanda's got an update on Aaron Vogel.
Loose. She had to pit to come in. She was trying to slow down on the straightaways to see if she could get herself tighter. Just a rough start for DXDT here today. Another unfortunate event. This one bought Aaron Vogel.
Now, that is very strange. John, have you ever had that happen where the belts just come loose?
Well, I've had belts detach. In other words, the buckle that all the 6 points attached to. I've had that happen. And when it does, the loads are so great, even in a GT3 car like the Mercedes-AMG GT3, under braking, you will almost sort of torpedo down into the footwell. It's a real frustration. And to have something as fundamental as that, now, it doesn't often happen. It once in a blue moon, put it that way. Unfortunately, for today, Aaron's blue moon happened about lap 10 or 12.
And we'll see if she can recover. She's got very fast co-driver Michael Cooper, who we'll see jump behind the wheel of that car during the pit stop window, coming up in 20 minutes or so from now, about actually a little less than that. As this fight continues to be hot and heavy, really good stuff here from Jeff Burton. I'm incredibly impressed with him. He's done a lot of GT4 racing. He started his pro racing career in a Lamborghini Super Trofeo car, which is widely regarded as one of the more difficult single-make cars to drive that you can find. And I talked to him yesterday. He said, you know what, I really wasn't ready for that. I thought I was, and I found out pretty quick. This is a bit more than I was expecting. So he did the smart thing. He went and found some GT4 cars. He's been running with Reardon Racing the last couple of years, really improving his racecraft. And here he is, stepping up to GT3, a Lamborghini platform that he's very, very comfortable with, and looking strong here at this point, running in the 3rd spot in the Pro-Am class, chasing down last year's Am champion and a really stout runner himself, Fred Purdad.
Yes, but again, we're looking at a situation where Purdad has got the so if you want to say the psychological advantage, Burton has been behind him. He's been trying here, trying there, but he's never ever, to what we have seen on screen, been able to stick the nose of the Lamborghini sufficiently alongside the Porsche of Purdad to say, I'm going to take the corner away from you. And to some degree, that's worked to the favour of Purdad. So his pace, as I go back to this thing of when you run close to another car, you lose your own natural momentum. That's what we're seeing here. Jeff Burton is running at the pace that's being dictated by the Porsche. He needs to drop back momentarily, pick up his own natural pace, and have another go and try and get a run into one of the tighter corners where overtaking is possible.
Good look here at Rodrigo Salas. Great to have Compass Racing, not just back in SRO of America, but up in the top class for the first time. This is a team that is used to running GT3 cars. They've been running McLarens elsewhere in recent years, but rekindling an old relationship with Honda, and it's been a really good one. A team that for many, many years was based in Canada. They actually had decided, even pre-pandemic, to make the move to California last year, and it turned out to be very fortuitous indeed. One of the benefits is they're located just down the road from Honda Performance Development, and they found that that has been an extremely fruitful relationship to this point. As we drop back to this fight once again, Fred Pordad, Jeff Burton, just nothing to separate them. They've been within a second of one another for effectively this entire race, and we're 27 minutes into it.
Yeah, I mean, these two have been having this battle more or less since the flag fell and the race got underway. But going back to Rodrigo Salas, he is running in a very lonely part of the racetrack because he can't really see the next car down the road, which is the BMW of Dinan, and he can't see in his mirrors Purdad and the Porsche leading this battle between the Lamborghini and the Porsche. So you've got to keep your concentration, keep your focus, rely on information coming from the pit lane, from your team, to give you the pluses and the minuses. Certainly the Acura doesn't want to fall back into the grasp of this battle for second and third in Pro-Am. He's currently 9 seconds up the road from the Porsche. Now this time, as I'm speaking, coming out of carousel, Jeff Burton is getting himself into a better position. He's going to have a look one way. He goes to the left. He might try and make the undercut on the Porsche, but the Porsche's kept to the inside. Now he's going to make the undercut coming out of 7A. But Purdad is doing a very good job in defence. He's not offering up Jeff Burton any opportunities at all to stick the Lamborghini nose up alongside the Porsche.
Burton, though, closing in here. Pordad forced to be defensive once again. Burton really late on the brakes, but he's able to get it wound up. However, nowhere to make that move. Fred Pordad, stout in his defense, fighting a rear guard action here for the better part of 30 minutes. Oh, Burton takes a peek to the inside. Can he be last at the late breakers? Has to back out of it as Pordad sweeps across his nose, leaves him just that little gap, but able to get the power down. Engine over the rear drive wheels in that Porsche, powers out of turn 11 nicely and builds that gap just enough to be comfortable once again. Fred Pordad, a veteran of Porsche single-make racing. He's been in wheel-to-wheel battles like this for many, many years now, and I think that experience is really serving him well.
Yes, I think that what you're watching here is experience with a brand that you're familiar with. Jeff Burton is getting closer. It's almost as if something has clicked in his head, and he's now realizing, I need to get on with the program if I want to take this second place in Pro-Am away from the Porsche. I need to make it happen. And, of course, we're going to be coming into the round of pit stops not very far down the road. So you want to give your teammate the best opportunity when you make that pit stop. But watch again on the exit carousel. Lamborghini is the marginally quicker car through the corner and on the exit. This time not as close as he was one lap earlier. Again, takes the very late cut, thinking about, can I find a way up the inside? Jeff, if you were closer to him, you might. But currently, the advantage lies with Fred Purdad in the Porsche.
Jeff's got some wind in his sails. He was in the GT America powered by AWS race earlier today. Not the same chassis, but an identical Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, and was able to get a second-place finish in the Masters class, 5th overall. Has that track experience from earlier today that he's using to his advantage. More on Lamborghini now from pit lane and Amanda. follow up with Amanda on that here in just a moment. Back to our overall leader, Andrea Caldarelli, out in front. 30 minutes gone or thereabouts. And Andrea has done nothing but impress. Just an epic lap in qualifying to take pole by a huge margin over his teammate Corey Lewis. And that has carried over to the race here, John. The lead now nearly 12 seconds at the front of this field.
Well, just watching Andrea Caldarelli in the lead Lamborghini, you swear that why is he going so slow? But he's not going slow, but he's driving in that lovely, lovely manner where everything is coming to him. He and the car are driving in unison. He isn't putting any unnecessary strain or stress into the car. He makes his apexes absolutely perfectly, his brake points perfectly, no pressure. Just in that, again, I use the metronomic word as a way to describe a driver who is on top of his game. This driver in a Lamborghini, that's about as good as it gets. And he's leading comfortably now by 12.3 seconds from his teammate. Now, I think Corey Lewis, for his first race in a Lamborghini, that's a good position, good performance, because this is the master. You're trying to beat the master in a Lamborghini on your first outing here at Sonoma Raceway. That's a big ask for anyone.
Let's give it another try down in pit lane with Amanda on the Lamborghini story.
Yeah, Ryan, I actually heard earlier in the weekend that with the Hurricane Evo trim, every single one of them in North America is at this race here this weekend, including the two with K-Pax. I spoke with Jordan Pepper ahead of his turn in driving. I asked him how he felt that his teammate was doing. He's very impressed with how he's taken to this track for his first race in America, first race in Sonoma. He's excited about his team being right there in that number one position.
He'll get a chance to take over here pretty soon. It's a question of strategy when K-Pax wants to make that switch, but it's a good point. Lamborghini, talking to Chris Ward, their North American representative from Lamborghini Squadra Corsa, he was saying there have been a lot of these Huracans in private hands or whatever that weren't necessarily racing, but for whatever reason, they've fallen into the hands of race teams here in the last year or so, and in one championship or another, every single Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo in North America will be raced this year, which is really cool to see. It's worth keeping in mind, Squadra Corsa is relatively young. Porsche has been running factory race cars for a long time. Ferrari has as well, BMW, you name it. Squadra Corsa only came along in the last decade, and it's amazing how quickly they have risen to the fore, winning major races left and right, and have become a real force in GT3 racing.
Well, the whole Lamborghini race program, the Super Trofeo, I mean, I think I'm right in saying that the Lamborghini is the most widely raced brand in GT3 racing in the world. It's been a phenomenal success, and the development of the Huracan, again, it's a road car adapted to racing, maybe whereas the Acura was a race chassis adapted to road use. But back to car 33, Russell Ward, he's fallen a little bit further behind the second place Corey Lewis. Now the gap is 32 seconds, second to third place. So Russell Ward, all he will do is bring that car into the, well, not the first round of pit stops, the only pit stop, hand over to Phil Ellis. And, well, just under an hour of this race remaining, we've had a very clean race in effect. We haven't seen any full course yellows or safety car interventions. And that, one might say, is the only likelihood of getting this field compacted again to see a race to the flag.
Here's Frank Gannett. This is Ian Lacey Racing making a big step. They ran a couple of Ford Mustang GT4s in Pirelli GT4 America sprint competition last year for Frank and his co-driver of this season, Drew Stavely. We heard from Drew in the open to the show with Amanda down on pit lane prior to the race, and they were talking about how new they are to the car, how they're still learning things, and definitely using this weekend as much as a test as it is for a race. And all of this is invaluable experience. Some of these teams have years of experience with these cars. Look no further than the car behind. Turner Motorsport has been running this BMW M6 for years. So these are teams coming into the season with completely different expectation levels, but I bet by the end of this year, we'll see that gap close as the experience gap starts to close between the two.
Interesting comment made earlier in the day by Ryan Dale. This racetrack, he says, normally you get high tyre degradation. I'm just keeping an eye on the current laps against best laps. Ironically, on the last lap, Andrea Caldarelli was, 2-3 tenths slower than Corey Lewis. Now, that could have been traffic. I don't know the reasons for it. But there has been, over the course of just 30-odd minutes of this race, beginning to see a small drop off in the lap time that we were seeing much earlier in the race. And that's, again, something that all the drivers have to be careful of, that they understand the Pirelli tyre. It's not about going out and nailing it on the first couple of laps and then finding that the rubber has dropped off. You've got to be careful of your tyre. You've got to control the tyre. Again, the experience of someone like Andrea Caldarelli, that would be something that's second nature to him. But those that are less familiar, and particularly we're in early part of March, we're not at the normal kind of Sonoma Raceway temperatures that you'd get mid-July or August. So racetracks give you up a different personality.
That pass we saw a moment ago, George Kurtz getting by Frankenette, that was for position, as Kurtz is still recovering from his spin following contact earlier in this race. That was for 11th overall. It's also worth noting that Jeff Burton did make his way around Fred Pourdad a little while ago. He's up to 6th overall, second now in the Pro-Am class, and Jeff's going to try and track down Rodrigo Salas. We'll check that gap at the line. I think it was around 12 seconds the last time. But here's George on that recovery drive, already a race winner today back in the GT America race in a similar Mercedes-AMG chassis, but a different one, and had to come back to get that win too. And he'll be turning it over to an ace of a driver in Colin Brown. These two teamed up along with a couple of other drivers in an SPS Automotive entered Mercedes-AMG GT3 last year at the Total 24 Hours of Spa. Had some issues early on, some damage that caused them issues throughout the race, but talking to George about it, he loved everything about the experience. And John, that was without fans in attendance. Imagine Spa without fans and then going back and actually getting the full experience. I think that's why George is so keen to get back and get the full Spa experience this time.
Well, one would hope that Spa will take place on a normal date. In fact, it's not Sonoma. It's going to be maybe 1 week later in 2021. The 2020 event was held in October. Of course, that was a race where you had virtually 12 hours of light and 12 hours of darkness. Completely changed the character and the personality of the toughest GT race in the world. Make no mistake, Spa-Francorchamps at night, raining, cold, miserable, and there was no smell of the traditional Belgian friteur, the chips that you buy when you go to Spa-Francorchamps. The smell permeates all around the racetrack, and there was none of that this year.
It's a real shame. It's certainly not the same ambiance as we look at a battle for position. Taylor Hagler in the Racer's Edge car under pressure here, working up the inside. David Askew recovering from a drive-through penalty contact with George Kurtz earlier in the race. That sent George into the grass, and the stewards didn't like what they saw. Nice defensive driving there from Taylor, able to keep David behind. There is a gulf of experience racing in GT3 cars with these two. Taylor, a graduate of the HPD GT3 Driver Academy from last year, and she'll be racing alongside effectively a classmate from last year. Dakota Dickerson will be taking over here this weekend, and at future races it'll be Jacob Abel, a couple of young open wheel up-and-comers that will be sharing the car throughout the year with Taylor. But for now, able to hang on to that spot, which again is the 4th position in Pro-Am and 8th on the overall charts as it stands, with 51 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. Pit window will be opening very soon. It is from the 49-minute, 59-second mark until the 40-minute mark. They have that period of time, a mandatory pit stop, 4 tires and fuel, and driver change. And then all of a sudden, the Pro-Am lineups will have the pros in the cars, and we'll have a whole different set of circumstances to talk about.
David Askew almost found a way around the Acura on the previous lap. He did the right thing. He got penalised because of an incident on the opening lap. He didn't want to get penalised on that last lap. As we go back to our race leader up at the top of the circuit, Andrea Caldarelli, his lead is now stabilised. It's about 12 and a bit seconds. But look, he's still hustling. You can see the Lamborghini just a little flinch as he threw it, and he does through cars around into turn 8, down the hill, down into the chicane. Corey Lewis, 12.7 seconds behind. Then there's a massive gap to third place. Russell Ward, 39 seconds now behind the second place Lamborghini. Andrea Caldarelli, this has been an absolute wheel-perfect drive. And I don't want to put the commentator's curse on Andrea Caldarelli before he makes his pit stop and hands that car over to... I'm looking forward to seeing Jordan Pepper behind the wheel of a Lamborghini in a race context, because he is exciting. First of the pit stoppers are making their way in now.
And that was really, really close to crossing that commitment line too soon. I think both the Racer's Edge car and the DXDT car got in just in the nick of time. But that's good strategy from up on the box, seeing that they were going to have the chance. And the advantage that's going to give these two is it will put the pros in the car for effectively an extra lap. So definitely a big point here. We'll have to remember this for the future. So here comes the 63 DXDT Racing Mercedes. David Askew behind the wheel. There is a minimum pit stop delta. So it's 87 seconds from pit in to pit out. I'm told that on the pit speed limiter, 50 kilometers per hour is the speed limit. It should take 45 seconds just to drive the pit lane. So the remaining time then is what you have to ideally accomplish this pit stop. 4 tires, full tank of fuel, and driver change. And I'm excited to see our first look at Dakota Dickerson as he takes over for Taylor Hagler in that Racer's Edge car. Here's Aaron Vogel coming in, among others. I think we're going to see most of the Pro-Am lineups take advantage of this now to get the pros in the car for as long as they can. Meanwhile, many of the pro teams have a bit more flexibility built into their strategy, and I'm curious if K-Pax might split their strategy with their cars running 1-2, one coming in earlier to cover the other. And indeed, here is our leader, Andrea Caldarelli, right behind the number 91 of Jeff Burton, who is basically that far from going down a lap from that opening stint. We'll see what the K-Pax crew can do on their first stop.
One of the essence of these pit stops is, okay, that was fortuitous for the Acura and the Mercedes to come in literally a couple of seconds, almost at the point before the pit lane opened there as Caldarelli in. But it is making your pit stop not so much when you come in, but knowing where you will go back out. Will you get out in relatively clear air, or will you go out and find yourself caught behind cars that are difficult to pass? So the K-Pax Lamborghini.
And K-Pax in for their pit stop. Amanda is standing by.
Well, as you guys can see Andrea Caldarelli having Jordan Pepper get into the car. 3 things will happen on this pit stop. The driver change, of course. 4 new Pirelli slicks will go on the cars. And, of course, the refuel. It's a minimum of 7 seconds before they get back to the racetrack. This is where the crew gets to shine, where the driver shines on track.
And you saw the K-Pax car sit stationary for a while. That's because they know how long it will take for them to leave that pit stall and get to pit out. They don't want to go out too soon, or there would be a penalty. So anytime you see the car sit for a brief moment, that's a sign the crew did their job well. They didn't leave anything on the table. Andrea Caldarelli handing over to Jordan Pepper.
Ryan, that was a crucial move by Jordan Pepper, because he was trying to juggle not breaking the delta time. At the same time, he didn't want to let Matt McMurray and the Acura get ahead of him. He wanted that clear air because he knew if the second place Lambo was actually the leading Lamborghini of Corey Lewis, he did lead for a lap. But that was crucial for the 3 Lamborghini to get ahead of the Acura at that point. So there's a real bit of juggling on the part of Jordan Pepper to just sprint to get ahead of the Acura, but then almost to back out of it to ensure that he didn't exceed the delta time and therefore face a penalty.
Here is the second K-Pax Racing Lamborghini. Corey Lewis, as John mentioned, did lead a lap in the pit stop shuffles. The lone American in this 2-car driver lineup gets out and hands it over to Giovanni Venturini, Lamborghini factory driver extraordinaire, getting his first chance at SRO America competition. Here's a replay of an incident on track. Oh boy, that is the Compass Racing car, lost the left rear wheel. I think as simple as just not getting it tightened, and that car is dead stick at the moment. With 45 minutes left on the clock, that very well could bring out a full course caution, and those big leads would be gone. With now all pros in the car, that could really shake this thing up.
Well, that's the thing that was always going to make a difference to this race being dominated by K-Pax. Now we will either have a full course yellow or a safety car. One company follows the other as we see the 6 Lamborghini making their way. It's about to go across that demarcation line there so he can get back on full throttle. He must not break that line. You can see that demarcation line on the left of your picture. Again, you must keep all 4 wheels to the left of that demarcation line. That's a penalty if you transgress across it. Now, Giovanni Venturini behind the wheel of a car he's extremely familiar with. Maybe not quite as fortunate as Jordan Pepper because there are 2 cars directly ahead of him. He will be the quicker of these 3 cars when eventually he catches to the tail of them. It'll be a lap maybe, but Venturini will be on the pace really from the moment he left the pit lane. The level of confidence and knowledge he's got with the Lamborghini Hurricane will just enable him to do so.
Watching Drew Stavely now behind the wheel of the Ian Lacey Racing Aston Martin. He's got Jan Halen behind him. This is not a battle for position. Halen is running 5th, but is leading in Pro-Am for Wright Motorsports. Stavely a lap down at this point after Frank Gannett's opening stint. And up front to Jordan Pepper. A star in the making, comes from a South African racing family. His father, Ian, was a touring car driver in South Africa. His sister, Tasman, raced in the W Series in its inaugural season and has aspirations of being a racing driver herself. Jordan Pepper, though, has made a name for himself in a short amount of time, showing up on the European scene a few years back. And has really excelled, especially when conditions get tough. It seems like he always comes to the fore and picks up a big lead courtesy of Andrea Caldarelli's strong opening stint.
Ryan, his first flying lap was a 1:39.2 against the fast lap of the race, and that's in that number 3 Lamborghini from Caldarelli, a 1:38.5. That was set a few laps into Caldarelli's race. Jordan Pepper on it, and he will no doubt get quicker. You know, the first flying lap, you're always just feeling your way around the racetrack, knowing how has it changed since I was out qualifying this morning. That's the process he's going through. There's the wave yellow flag to indicate the Acura with its left rear wheel way out to the right of racetrack. Never a good thing to see a wheel having or detaching from a race car. It goes anywhere and everywhere.
For now, at least, race control seems satisfied with covering that stranded car with a local yellow. To the peak here at Dakota Dickerson. Has some company behind him in the form of a Mercedes AMG GT3. Dakota's got the Ryan Dial-driven DXDT car right behind. It's been a good recovery from them after Asker's drive-through penalty. Running, looks like, up in the 7th spot, closing in on the back of Dickerson, graduate, as I mentioned earlier, of that HPD GT3 Driver Academy.
Well, Ryan Dial is an extremely experienced driver, of course, comes from the United Kingdom. But when I heard him interviewed earlier today, I thought, well, did he come from the UK? He's taken on the accent of the country in which he's been racing in for so many years. But an extremely accomplished, a very professional driver behind the wheel of probably the easiest of all the GT3 cars here this weekend to race, the one that I would say is overall the most forgiving. Ryan Dial is going to rag that Mercedes AMG GT3 all the way around the 12 turns here at Sonoma Raceway. Makes a move, well, not to overtake, but just wants to put his car into that left door mirror of Dickerson in the Acura. Now, again, just moving around, trying to cause a distraction for Dickinson, not to know which side is he going to come from. The pass is going to come. Look, he's gone out to the left to make the undercut as he comes out of 7A. Sort of covered off by the Acura, but how close can you get coming down the hill? Might be an opportunity to make a move under brakes, but I think he's not going to be close enough unless he got a momentum. But no, has to be patient. can't get it done here, he'll think about my next opportunity. Down into the hairpin, down at turn 11.
I don't want to be too patient here because we understand a full course yellow will come out once the pit window closes. So effectively, race control doesn't want to disadvantage anybody because that car is deemed to be in a relatively safe spot on the track. So a pass that could be made here, it would stick, and then you would bunch up with the cars in front of you. And this could be a crucial moment if Ryan Dial can get it done. I think it's a fascinating study here watching these two. Dial came from single-seater racing, came to the States to be able to pursue that, ended up with a long career in sports cars. Dakota Dickerson, on the other hand, just starting his career primarily in single-seaters, but now maybe seeing a career path in sports cars, might follow very much in the footsteps of Ryan Dial. Let's get down to the pit lane. Amanda has an update for us there.
Well, Compass Racing came into the pit number one. I'm sure it was very tough for Rodrigo to watch the left rear tire of that. How do you come back from that moment?
Well, you know, the Compass guys are a great team. We had a great season together back in 2018. Mistakes happen. I don't know if it was a mechanical issue or just a mistake, but I know we're going to come back even stronger. We showed good pace. It's a good car. I mean, I'm a little bit heartbroken, of course. It's never easy when these things happen, but that's racing. All we can do is each of us does our part, and I know that we'll come back stronger, so it's all right.
And guys, just a little bit aside on the emotional side, Rodrigo actually walked away from pit lane for about three to 4 minutes before returning. You know it's hitting him pretty hard.
Tough to see the race go away with the bouncing Pirelli. There is the double yellow full course as we anticipated, and boy, oh boy, John, this changes everything. That massive gap that the two K-Pax Lamborghinis had built up, you can say goodbye, and now they'll have a couple of really strong pros right on their heels with Robbie Foley and Phil Ellis. Then you throw in a vet like Ian Halen, Dakota Dickerson, and Ryan Dial. When we go back green, it's going to be on.
What's interesting, as we went to that pit lane interview, was that Venturini had caught up to the tail of that battle between Dial and Dickerson. And, of course, that was going to be an issue for the second-place Lamborghini because he was going to have to deal with two cars that were in their own individual battle. Here's the moment where the left wheel detached from the Acura. That was just literally on the outlap after a pit stop. We don't know the cause of it. It could have been a wheel nut got cross-threaded. It could have been that the wheel wasn't seated on the stub axle itself correctly. Whatever the reasons, there is the Honda, and this is the reason now we've got this full course yellow. And Jordan Pepper, the race leader, who had a very, very comfortable lead, 14.8 seconds before we went to the safety car. He now that gap will remain.
And one thing
it will remain.
Yeah, one thing I had kind of forgotten about is the fact that the leaders had lapped a good portion of this field, so that's going to change things a little bit. I need the field to cycle through one more time to give me an idea of exactly how many cars remain on the lead lap. I believe it's at least 3 at this point, but might have a few more out of contention than I had initially thought. Safety crew there attending to the stricken Matt McMurray car.
Yes, because the first and second place cars have got lap cars between them, and likewise the second and third place cars will have the same. There is, I think, the second place Lamborghini just coming into view. There is the lead K-Pax Lamborghini with Jordan Pepper behind the wheel. The Aston Martin behind, that's running down in 12th place, so that's a car that's already, it may in fact be 2 laps down when they come across the start-finish line. So consternation for the teams. This is when these guys have to do their job, and they need to calculate the circumstances of where we will be when this track goes back to green. The one thing that's going to be, to me, evidently clear is that the number 3 Lamborghini K-Pax Lamborghini is going to be in the comfortable position. There is the second place Lamborghini, but it's still got to find a way behind, past Ryan Dial and Dickerson in the Acura. And then we're waiting for the number 96 BMW to see where it is. Will it come into view? No, that's, I think
he's still quite a ways back. The last time around,
he was certainly he was in time a long way behind.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, behind the safety car, the cars will end up lining up astern. So all the hard yards that were done by the 2 K-Pax Lamborghinis in that opening stint up until the pit stop window opened. That now is going to be changed. There is currently the third place BMW, Matt Foley behind the wheel, and he can see the second place Lamborghini, one car between them. If you ever wanted inspiration, there it is, right in front of you.
No question about it. The quarry is in sight. Well, someone who's not had to chase anybody effectively throughout the course of this race, our pole sitter Andrea Caldarelli is standing by with Amanda.
Well, guys, we've been talking about how crucial these restarts are, especially here in Sonoma. And one person very interested in that is Andrea. And how anxious are you for Jordan as we get back up to racing here soon?
Well, I think Jordan is anxious. I'm quite okay. I'm quite relaxed here, but it's very difficult because the temperature is not so high, even though we have a beautiful sunshine. But it's very easy to have a lot of pickup, and with the cold tires, it's going to be quite tricky the first 2-3 laps.
You've seen this track. Were you able to relay any information to Jordan during the driver change?
Yeah. I shouted him a couple of things about track being dirty in turn 3 and turn 4, like this morning. But I told him just take care of the rear tires because they're going to drop quite quickly.
Thank you.
Great to hear from Andrea. Quite a stirring debut in SRO America competition for him, looking very strong to this point. My understanding of the rules as they've been in the past is that at the race director's discretion, there can be a wave-by to put some cars on the same lap as the leader, but I'm not 100% sure if that carries over to this year. So let's all pay close attention, and we'll find out together as we go along here. 33 minutes on the clock as it stands. If you're Jordan Pepper, you like seeing some of this time tick off the clock to eliminate effectively chances for anybody to track you down as the race comes to a close?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody would have been tracking down the number 3 Lamborghini. Jordan Pepper had this race in his control. But, of course, under these circumstances, safety cars, or 33 minutes of the race remaining, who's to say that we won't have another safety car intervention? And that, of course, is where you cannot calculate every aspect of what's going to take place in this event. So Jordan Pepper and the number 3 Lamborghini crew, very happy with the circumstances. They've got, you might call it their rear gunner, Giovanni Venturini, in second place, although he's got a car between himself, and so that they will fall in line. It will be the 3 car that will, I think, take the checkered flag. It will be the number 6 Apex Lamborghini that will take second place. This is the car we've got to keep an eye on. Matt Foley in that 96 BMW F13 M6 GT3. I'm almost out of breath giving you the car's full title. And that's the car that could, with the assistance of a safety car intervention or things that are beyond the control of any of the competitors, that could be the car that would split the 2 Lamborghinis.
Robbie Foley, definitely a driver on the rise. He teamed up with Michael Dinan, his co-driver here this year in Pirelli GT4 America. Last year, they won the Sprint X Pro-Am Championship. Dinan, who he coaches, won the AM Sprint Championship last year. They were very strong there, and they were trying to figure out where do we go next? What's the next step? And Michael really felt like GT3 was the next step. Robbie has an existing relationship with Turner, and that certainly helped to put all of this together. But Robbie Foley himself is a driver who has risen to prominence in recent years. It's an interesting story. He suffered a very bad leg injury in a football, that's American football, game going back to high school. Tore ligaments in his knee, broke his tibia, fibula, ankle, had some nerve damage there, and basically was laid up and really wanted to get into racing. He got homeschooled after that injury, and as a benefit, a gift effectively for getting straight A's, got to go to Skip Barber School, and here we are with a great run here for Robbie Foley. His co-driver, Michael Dinan, is standing by with Amanda, though, down in pit lane.
Officially made his debut in the Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS. And Mike, when you look back at your effort, what did you learn here today?
First and foremost, I learned just to stay consistent, try not to make any mistakes. It's my first race in GT3, also my first race as a pro here. So the goal was just to go out there, learn as much as possible, and have realistic expectations for this first weekend.
As you approach race 2, is there anything you'll do differently?
Say that again, sorry.
When you approach race 2, is there anything you'll do differently?
As we go into race 2, obviously it's going to be different with Robbie taking the start. I think I'll probably have to deal with some more traffic because, the order will be slightly split up with the pro starting and pro-am. But my goal is just to have a clean race, do the best job that I can, and try to bring home the car in the best position possible. Thank you.
Great to hear from Michael Dinan, the winningest driver in SRO America competition last year. He came out to, 6 wins in Sprint X. He won 11 times in sprint, so 17 wins, and he didn't run the full season and had a conflict for one of the races at Circuit of the Americas, so there's a chance that perhaps another win that went away. A couple of the championships as well. A young guy without a ton of racing experience, but has come a long way in a short amount of time, and actually Robbie Foley, his coach, deserves a lot of credit for that. It's so important, especially in this day and age, John. I know maybe when you were racing, driver coaches weren't so much a thing, but it's really become one in recent years, and having the right driver-coach relationship can make all the difference.
Driver coaches, we did it on the hoof. It's something that's come in over time, where experienced drivers who are too old to race give that experience. They don't give it, actually. They get paid to help young guys come along, and it shortcuts the process. But, of course, so many of the younger generation of drivers that are coming into motorsport these days are starting in karting. So by the time they get to 17 or 18 years of age, they've had half a career behind them already. So I don't know quite where the coaching element comes in. But certainly, I know that many drivers have benefited from having somebody who understands what they're talking about. And maybe the driver himself isn't capable of conveying that particular communication to the team clearly. Sometimes a driver coach can help you do that. And it's that communication between driver and team that is key. As we go back, the safety car has come in. This race is going to get underway, just under 30 minutes remaining. And the race leader is, surprisingly, number 3, K-Pax Lamborghini Jordan Pepper behind the wheel.
The South African in his SRO America debut, raced at Indianapolis in the Intercontinental GT Challenge race that joined SRO America. Looking very strong here early. Takes the green flag, pulls away, has some lap traffic in behind him. That is the lapped car of Drew Stavely, the Ian Placey racing car. This, though, is where we want to keep an eye on a little bit further back if we can. There are positions up for grabs elsewhere, but spots on the podium. But we're keeping an eye on Giovanni Venturini in the bright green Lamborghini. Robbie Foley, a couple of cars behind in the Turner BMW. They run second and third overall and in the pro class.
And this is going to be a problem for Venturini, because you've got Ryan Dalziel pushing like mad to get past Dickinson in the Acura, and likewise there we see the BMW sitting, keeping a weather eye on what's going on ahead. Now look, this is the battle that's really going to frustrate Venturini, because Ryan Dalziel, will he do enough? Yes, he has. Good pass. That all began on the exit of the carousel. He got a run out of the corner. We know the Mercedes are very good out of the carousel. Got the run up the hill, up into turn 7. Now Venturini wants to capitalise on that. He wants to get through as quickly as possible. Does not want to get bogged down behind the Acura and lose more time.
Great pass around the outside, though, from Ryan Dalziel, picking up second place in Pro-Am from Dakota Dickerson. The veteran from Glasgow, Scotland, now domiciled in Florida. Great move to pick up that spot there. Here is Robbie Foley. Hasn't got the best of restarts, to be quite honest. And he's watching that green Lamborghini disappear out the windshield. That has to be demoralizing.
Yes, it is, but he has got slightly more clear air between himself and the car that it is directly ahead of him. Again, that's the car that's a lap down. So Robbie Foley in third place, Turner Motorsport BMW M6. I'll leave it there because the title is so long. Up the hill, up into 3 and 3A to the right. Car gets light at the crest, then it drops down, and then heavy braking into turn 4. Easy to make a mistake. We saw that earlier in qualifying when drivers got caught out with a damp, cold track. Now through 5, flat out through 5, up the crest, and then again braking into turn 6, the carousel corner, where if you get it wrong, it will go wrong every which way.
One piece of business to clean up real quick. You might notice the absence of Phil Ellis in this battle. He had been running very high up the order. Got word from a Mercedes representative that there was an issue, an electrical issue with that car, a battery short that started at the driver change during the pit stop. So they appeared to not be running at the moment, scored back in the 12th place. A real shame because Russell Ward started that car and had a great run going, was running in podium contention. Has fallen out of the fight for the moment. Robbie Foley under a lot of pressure. This is not for position, but he does not want that lap car to get around him. That's Colin Brown behind him, because that's just one more obstacle in the way of trying to find a way to catch Giovanni Vincerini for second overall.
And Ryan Dalziel in the 63 Mercedes is making further progress. And these are back markers he's passing, but he is making progress. He's gotten past the Acura, and that's really released the Mercedes 63 to pursue. Now, that car currently is still showing in fifth place. It's the Porsche number 20, which is leading the Pro-Am category right now, Jeff Hayden. That is, well, it's a long way up the road from this particular 63 Mercedes. Nevertheless, DL is going to push. The Scottish driver, there you see the Soltar, that's the Scottish flag, and he wears it proudly either on his helmet or on his overalls or somewhere, as all Scottish racing drivers have done since time immemorial.
And it does look like he's actually a bit closer than we anticipated to Jan Halen. That is the battle for the lead in Pro-Am. Down a lap from the overall battle, but we'll keep a close eye on that. And as our camera crew does so, let's get down to the pit lane. Amanda has an update for us.
Well, I'm standing by with the reigning AM champion from last season. They are racing in the Pro-Am category this year. And when you reflect on your effort here today, how comfortable are you with this car sitting in the number one position right now?
Well, I'll tell you, the car feels good today. It's the best it's felt all weekend. We really got off to a slow start in practice. Couldn't quite get the car set up the way we wanted. So I'm very happy with the way the car feels. The track is as good as it's been all weekend as well. I think the competition is going to be really good this year. You know, if you place one wheel wrong, then you're going to lose a position. So I'm very comfortable with where we are right now, but not ever too comfortable. That's a long way to go.
Still 23 minutes to go, 23 minutes and 5 seconds to be precise, but a strong drive from his co-driver, Jan Halen. Very experienced driver, IndyCar experience, but more lately sports cars, and has fallen into a very comfortable role, it would appear, with Wright Motorsports. Gets the call up to run some endurance races with them, involved in driver coaching. This is a team that has roots that stretch down to the single-make level, Porsche Cup racing, and he works with some of the drivers there, and in fact, that's partially where the relationship with Fred Pordat came from. The two ran together at COTA last year as a Pro-Am lineup after Fred had already clinched the AM championship, and his normal co-driver, Max Root, had to miss that race to go run and make his debut at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and then the three of them ran together at the Indianapolis 8 Hours. So proving to be a strong pairing here, a team with extensive Porsche experience going back many, many years. But he might have his hands full here before too much longer as Ryan Dalziel continues to close fourth right there on that top speed chart. Advantage, though, to the BMW of Robbie Foley, and that carries over from a conversation we had back in the first stint when Michael Dinan was doing similar things, John, very fast in a straight line.
Ryan, just one lap ago, Ryan Dalziel made an error through the chicane, and there's contact there, bodywork flying, and that is the back of a Lamborghini that's been tagged. I don't know whether that's a tire issue or a car issue, but something's been. So there you can see the left front of the Mercedes hits the back, and I think the back of the Mercedes, that I can't make out, is that, let's look again and see why. So the BMW gets compromised, it has to back out of it, the Mercedes hits the back of the BMW, bodywork all over the racetrack, and that's not a particularly good part of the circuit through turn 10. That will maybe, okay, that was car 4, I beg your pardon, so that's further down the field. That was the Colin Brown Mercedes that was, there we are, so they were teammates. Anyway, the contact, 4 cars all getting together. The consequence is through turn 10, loads of that Mercedes-Benz on the racing line.
I think it started with a problem for Vesko Kozarov in the 91 Reardon Racing Lamborghini. He was at the front of that train, and everything stacked up behind him, and I suspect Vesko had something to do with it primarily because that car is listed as in pit lane at the moment. So maybe we can get a look here from a different angle. It is the same angle, but it just didn't seem to accelerate, and it stacked everyone up. You can't really anticipate that, can you, John?
No, and that was a nightmare because it was the BMW that was really compromised. And then the Mercedes suddenly had nowhere to go and it just literally ran into the back, did little damage to the BMW. But again, the left front of the Mercedes, you can see the splitter, the front assembly of what is basically the bodywork that holds the entire front of the car together. So that is a disappointment. And again, that's the unpredictability. These things occur. You can't factor them in. All you can hope is that the incident is not considered serious enough. Now, the BMW, the right rear of that car was hit by the Mercedes, the left front. It appears to be okay, albeit now running in traffic. Can we look and see? Well, you can see the hit in the back of the car. It doesn't look to me as if it's got anything that's going to be permanent. But the left front of the Mercedes, not looking very healthy.
I do think we've been told that the Turner BMW did come to pit lane and at least got a look over from the crew before heading out. So Robbie Foley, effectively nothing to lose at that point. He was the last car on the lead lap and still holds the third position even after that pit stop. And in position to still bring home a podium as we look at this internecine battle between a couple of DXDT racing cars. The front one, the Colin Brown car that was involved in that contretemps a little bit earlier on. You see the damage there, and it's very similar damage to what was sustained by the car that's chasing. That's Michael Cooper behind the wheel. Aaron Vogel in qualifying earlier today had something very similar happen in a similar spot on the track, as a matter of fact. Similar damage as well, and they've been playing catch-up ever since. Aaron had a good race. Here comes Cooper to the inside, and that might be teammates helping one another out a little bit. But Aaron had a good start to this race. It kind of went awry, but Michael Cooper here trying to recover to some degree. That move has him up to fourth in Pro-Am. So all things considered, on a dismal day for DXDT Racing, this is probably the one performance to write home. But now Michael Cooper with problems. That was strange.
What are they doing? And it's very strange because the four Mercedes looked like it just ran wide in turn 7 and allowed the sister car to go through. Then, and that was a give you the place back pass. There was no racing involved in that particular incident. Maybe that was a pit lane instruction. Hopefully we might find out from Amanda in the pit lane as to why that incident, why did one car overtake the sister car and then the positions were reversed.
Amanda, what are you hearing?
Well, I'm down here with George Kurtz at the moment, guys, actually, and when you talk about the highs and lows in racing, he's coming off of his win in GTA and now witnessing this. How difficult is that to see?
It's pretty tough. I mean, obviously, you got to take the good with the bad. And it's unfortunate, we had some contact, and we'll have to go look at the videotape. But I know we had good pace all day, and we're at least P4, and we'll see if we can mitigate damage at this point.
Have you been able to talk to David Askew after the incident in the first half of the race?
Yeah, he came by and just apologized, and we'll get it all sorted out. I mean, it's racing; it happens. It's obviously it's unfortunate, but we'll regroup, and hopefully we'll be good to go for tomorrow.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Now, those two, not just teammates, speaking of George and David, but very close friends. There's great camaraderie under that DXDT racing tent. Spoke earlier in the broadcast about the amount that they've invested in this program. And they really have high hopes. Unfortunately, an inauspicious start to the season, but it's just race one. Plenty of racing still ahead of us. 16 minutes of racing still to go in this race. Jordan Pepper continues to lead, but the gap has shrunk. Giovanni Venturini closed in to 10 seconds the last time by. Pepper crossed the line a few moments ago. We're waiting for Venturini to clear that timing line to get an update, and it's grown again, so maybe traffic had something to do with that. Back up to 12.3 seconds in the fight for the overall lead. This is further back. Brown and Cooper for 4th and 5th in Pro-Am. And Ryan Dial continues to try and chase down Jan Halen for the lead in Pro-Am. 1.5 seconds between those two.
Yes, the gap between first and second will seesaw depending on where you might catch traffic. But on the last lap, it was clear that Pepper was actually 2 seconds a lap quicker. And that's not just simply because Jordan Pepper's a quicker driver. There would be a reason, and the most likely excuse or reason would be that Venturini caught traffic in the wrong part of the racetrack. Corner speeds at turn 11. That's a turn 36 mile an hour, turn 11. That's the hairpin bend.
Yes.
That was one corner out. So 36 miles an hour, would you believe it? You could almost drive your road car around at that speed.
These GT3 cars don't love going that slow. It is a tough corner for a number of reasons. That's that hairpin, second to last corner on the track where you have an opportunity. See several different lines taken. In fact, we're about to watch our race leader negotiate that corner. John, talk us through how you get around a tight hairpin like this.
Well, my view is you tend to hug the inside of the corner all the way around. It's a slow in, quick out corner. If you try to make a very late apex, you run the risk of running too wide in the early part of the corner, picking up the dirt that would be building up on the outside, the rubber, the dust that's been there, and of course the rain that fell overnight. So hugging the tight line all the way around, pick up the throttle as early as you can. You'll feel the amount of bite you got on the steering and the amount of bite you got on the rear of the car. And when that message comes through the seat of your pants, through your body, you'll know when to get on the throttle. There is second place Giovanni Venturini chasing 13 seconds now behind Jordan Pepper in the lead. He's not given up the chase. His last lap was it was about 6 and a bit tenths of a second slower. Jordan Pepper has got the overall advantage over Venturini, but Venturini is still, let's look and see, corner 6. This is where we are now. Top speed, Randy L. And then the Ferrari is second quickest, and actually the joint quickest. That's impressive. Why is that Ferrari so quick in the carousel, but not overall quick in the lap? But anyway, 78 miles an hour. You're accelerating all the way through to come onto the short chute up to turn 7.
Especially impressive for the Ferrari, considering that was the car that was in pieces yesterday. A lot of credit must be given to AF Corsa for making those repairs. That's a corner where it's going to test the car, make sure everything's pointed straight. High speed, high commitment, long duration, and clearly they got those repairs made. And the car is running well for Conrad Grunwald, the only AM pairing in the field here this weekend. Good to see them bounce back from some misfortune earlier in the race. This is Ryan Dial. Talked about him earlier. Veteran sports car driver and experienced in all kinds of cars, open wheel cars, prototypes, GT cars, fast in all of them. He has been working with David Askew for some time as a pro driver, and they've got aspirations of a good result, not just here but all season long. Right now trying to track down Jan Halen for the lead in Pro-Am. Here's Dakota Dickerson. Mentioned him earlier, young guy with a lot of experience, but in open wheel cars, making that transition to sports cars. He was the F4 U.S. champion in 2018. He was an F3 champion here in the States in 2019. Went sports car racing primarily last year, and a graduate of the Driver Academy. You made that transition, John, from open wheel cars to sports cars. What was that like?
Didn't pay as well for a start, but aside from that, you should never laugh at your own jokes. The transition was one, for me, was a form of tapering down from having had 10 years in Formula One. The cars were very quick cars in that day. They were Group C prototypes, 850 horsepower, 1,000 kilograms, a lot of downforce. Coming here in 86 in that IMSA program, again, a lot of horsepower, a lot of downforce. For me, it was a tapering off process. For drivers that are coming from single-seaters into GT3 racing, for example, out of a single-seater, probably the nearest car in the field to a single-seater with bodywork on is the Acura. It is such a fundamentally good chassis. You were talking about the Ferrari. That's the only AM car in the race, and Grunwald being joint quickest through the carousel. The Ferrari 488 chassis is also an absolute gem. It is such a good car. It's the most popular race car amongst the AMs around the world. There's a reason for it, because it is a car that enables those, maybe say, more senior drivers amongst the field to feel comfortable and not get frightened.
Conrad Grunwald doing a great job running 8th overall in that car that has been heavily repaired, as we mentioned, over the course of the weekend. This battle rages on. A couple of teammates here, Colin Brown, Michael Cooper. Michael Cooper, it's been a while since we've seen him regularly in GT3 competition, but has won a GT3 championship in this series in Sprint X form a couple of years ago in a Mercedes. Takes a different line than his teammate there. Now, is that just driver preference, or is he trying to find some clean air for the downforce at the front of that car?
I would love to know what went on the radio between these two cars, because at one point, just trying to get the numbers, the number 4 car gave way up here at turn 7, and then further down the lap, the positions were reversed. Now, to me, Cooper in the 19 car is clearly quicker than Brown is in the number 4 car. But there has been some, I suspect, kind of decision made that this is the way they want these cars to take the checkered flag. You can see how much quicker Brown is coming in the chicane. It's just he's having to be patient. He's having to do, I would suggest, and I'm only trying to be fair in this, thinking that this is a team decision. It's not one that's being decided on the racetrack. That's a question that will maybe only be answered in the pit lane.
And only if they decide to answer us honestly. And no disrespect to the teams, but oftentimes they want to keep that strategy pretty close to the vest. The car up ahead of these two Mercedes is Drew Stavely in the Ian Lacey Racing Aston Martin, not on the same lap as these two. And Drew is very experienced. I suspect he will do his best not to interfere with this battle if there's any way to avoid it. But there are parts of this track you just can't hide. There is a single lane through a lot of these corners, and even if you are a little bit slower, a faster car is going to struggle to make that pass without a lot of help. And this is one of those sections right here through the carousel. We'll see what Drew does on the exit. This might be a place where he could pull over perhaps and let this battle through, but he is under no obligation to do so. But that is indeed what he does. Very sporting.
Ironically, all three cars, the two Mercedes obviously and the Aston Martin, run an AMG 4-litre turbocharged motor, so they've actually got the same level of power, same power delivery, same torque delivery, different chassis. The Mercedes GT3 or AMG GT3 is the superior chassis over a consistent season. The Aston Martin is a car you have to maybe fine-tune more than that of the Mercedes. As we go back to race leader Jordan Pepper with a comfortable 13-second advantage over his teammate, and looking to see where the third place, the first of the Pro-Ams, the Jeff Hayden and the Porsche, so it's still considerable distance. So the battle really is going to be for the final podium position between DL in 4th place, who's 3 seconds now behind Hayden, with 7.5 minutes or so remaining.
I did get an update by text a moment ago from a DXDT Racing driver, CJ Moses, who was scheduled to race in GT America, but was laid up by kidney stones, just like my normal broadcast partner, Calvin Fish. So a speedy recovery to both of you. But he says DXDT Racing, they don't do team orders. Everyone is on equal footing. So if Michael Cooper can make the pass, he has free reign to do so. So we'll keep a close eye on that as we look now at Giovanni Venturini, driver who is relatively unknown here in the States, but has done very well in Europe, primarily racing in the GT Open Series, a champion of that series a few years ago in Lamborghini equipment, and continuing to put on a great show. That's the K-Pax Racing tent. Top left, Thomas Blum, strategist extraordinaire for K-Pax Racing, one of the reasons they've had so much success. And it's telling that his strategy is so widely regarded that when Bentley needed some help with strategy for the Total 24 Hours in Spa a few years ago, this is before K-Pax ran in Europe, they actually brought Thomas over to help call strategy for them in 2019. And he's plying his trade once again here in SRO America as Venturini makes the pass of the lap car. That, I believe, Vesko Kozarov in one of the Reardon Racing Lamborghinis. Full garage for Reardon Racing. A couple of cars running in GT America, plus this GT World Challenge America entry as well. Jan Halen here, the Belgian who now lives in Florida. leader in the Pro-Am category. Ryan Dial giving chase, but dropping back now to about 3 seconds off. Jan Halen's co-driver, Fred Pordad, watches on.
Yeah, that battle for the final podium position it was actually closer a few laps back, but Jan Halen, as you mentioned, has managed to eke out enough performance, just over 5 minutes now remaining, for the Porsche, the venerable Porsche 911, and it's a race-winning car. We've seen it win at Spa 24 last year, won the 9 hours at Kailami at the very end of last year, and here it's going to be, I would suggest, on the podium. I think Ryan Diel has done all he has got in the tank. That one error he made here, 8 or 9 laps ago, that seems to have been sufficient to really stop that attack. Maybe he did some little bit of minor aerodynamic damage to the front splitter, couldn't really see, but certainly he went across the inside of the corner, and there is sand there, and if you dig the splitter in, you could maybe marginally damage the front of the car.
A developing story here. This is the Robbie Foley-driven BMW, which has been off the pace here in the last couple of laps. Was running third overall and has now dropped back all the way down to the 9th overall position. Still third in the Pro-Am class, and that's where he'll stay because Phil Ellis in the Windward car, that car's behind the wall or otherwise indisposed at the moment. But this might be right rear damage, and we did see some contact early on. We know they came to pit lane following that contact. I don't know, that was, 30 minutes or so ago, a little bit less than that. And perhaps there's some lingering issues stemming from that has derailed a solid day here for Robbie Foley.
Ryan, coming through the carousel, the right rear clearly was touching the bodywork somewhere. You could see a little puff of blue smoke coming from that right rear. The contact that we saw with the Mercedes because of the Lamborghini going slowly and then all that congestion, the tag on that right rear from the Mercedes may well have done a little bit of suspension alignment damage, and that's possibly why the BMW has dropped back from being a strong contender for the final podium position, now all the way back down, including the drive-through to check it out, in 9th position.
Just 3.5 minutes remaining. Time for a handful of more laps here. This is your leader, Jordan Pepper. Had a stirring run at the Indianapolis 8-hour in the rain, got caught out by GT4 traffic, but really stood out to me because he was running on slick tires when a rainstorm came in, and when everybody else brought their drivers in to change to wet tires, K-Pax kept him out in their Bentley on dries, and he not only kept it pointed the right direction, but also was very, very fast given the circumstances. Seems to be a quick study. Jumping into the Lamborghini. This is his first race in a Lamborghini after several years in Bentleys. They are from the same Volkswagen Audi group, but there's not much else similar between the two platforms, and yet this driver, he knows how to get the speed out of the car.
Well, they're two entirely different cars. The Bentley mid-engine front-engine car, the Lamborghini mid-engined rear-engine car. And they're almost as diametrically opposed as you could ever get between two race cars. But when you're a top professional driver, as Jordan Pepper is, you adapt very quickly. First of all, you adapt to the new driving seat, the new team you're in. Likewise, coming to it, he's familiar with Sonoma Raceway. But Andrea Caldarelli coming here for the first time, I would say, Andrea, if you didn't learn this racetrack in 5 or 6 flying laps, I would have been very surprised. Top professional drivers learn to adapt and adjust and pick up very quickly indeed.
There you see the Turner BMW off the pace, able to move to the inside, just trying to make it to the finish. That's the goal here at this point, unfortunately for them. Jordan Pepper coming around, and we'll see if the white flag waves, and it does. Final lap in race 1 of the season. Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. Jordan Pepper has K-Pax Racing solidly out in front. And it's a K-Pax Racing 1-2 because here comes the second place man, Giovanni Venturini. And Halen, third overall, fastest of the Pro-Am runners at this stage. Ryan Dial 2 seconds behind. He's made some inroads in recent laps, but doesn't look like it's going to be enough, barring a major mistake from Jan, who did have a spin in qualifying this morning. That came as a big surprise to me. Bounced right back, as you would expect. This car running very much towards the pointy end. This is our AM class competitor, Conrad Grunwald, behind the wheel. Spoke to him yesterday when that car came back on the flat toe, and they were not sure if it was going to be repairable or not. They went through some serious effort just to get that car race ready and to turn in the performance that they have, running some good times, running 8th overall as the only AM pairing. Very impressive stuff indeed. But no more impressive than what this man and his teammate Andrea Caldarelli have done, coming through for the final time, turn number 10 into the hairpin of turn 11. Jordan Pepper, the South African, in his SRO America debut, rounding the hairpin, making the left-handed bend now onto the front straightaway, waiting for that checkered flag, and K-Pax Racing returns to SRO America and returns to victory lane. Pro-Am leader here, Jan Halen. Sorry about that, John. Able to hold off the charge from Ryan Dial. He'll pick up the class win and a spot on the overall podium. Ryan Dial in second in Pro-Am. Venturini, by the way, did come home second overall. And in the pro category, waiting now on Dakota Dickerson to cross the line. This battle rages on. It is Colin Brown leading Michael Cooper. Can Michael get close enough to make a move? The answer is no for the moment. Trying to take that late apex line to get a run out of the corner. Drag race to the checkered flag. Doesn't look like Michael Cooper has enough, so give the 4th spot in class to Colin Brown. Michael Cooper and Aaron Vogel will share 5th here today, and Conrad Grunwald about to cross the line next. There he comes. The lone AM class entry, but 8th on the road. Impressive stuff indeed. Well, your impressions, John. Great to have you on the broadcast here. Your first SRO America race weekend. Great to have the pro class back. K-Pax Racing and Lamborghini, I think they made a statement for the rest of the series to take notice of. They have come with a mission.
I think the word I would use is awesome. That was an awesome performance by the K-Pax team. 2 brand new cars, to come to the first event early-ish in the year, different conditions to normally expect. Coming here would be maybe more in the middle of the summer. Outstanding performance by all 4 drivers. To me, no big surprise that the number 3 car is the one that takes the checkered flag, because the experience of Andrea Caldarelli, along with his speed and that of Jordan Pepper, was clearly going to be the team and car to beat. But lots of hope for the future. I mean, in the Pro-Am category, I'm delighted that Jan Halen in the Porsche. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Porsche fan. I own the beast. I love them to bits.
Great run indeed from the Wright Motorsports pairing. Did want to give a shout out, Andrea Caldarelli, not just the win, not just the pole, but how about the trifecta? The CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race. Dominant performance from him, from Jordan Pepper, the whole K-Pax team, a 1-2 result on home turf at Sonoma Raceway. They know this track well, and I suspect, too, that the days spent testing here at Sonoma definitely paid dividends. Several drivers in this lineup were new here to this track, and yes, they are pros. Yes, they pick it up quickly, but track time is track time, and I think that was very valuable for them to get those laps as they head back towards the victory podium, where soon we will be chatting with them. And really looking forward to that. Standout performances from you, John, beyond what we saw at the front of the field. Did anything grab your attention?
I think there were performances that we saw on camera. There would have been other performances that we didn't. But you'd like to go through, Ryan, there are our race winners and the rest of the field.
There you go, indeed. Andrea Caldarelli, Jordan Pepper, race winners in the first race of the season. Corey Lewis and Giovanni Venturini will settle for second. They'll have another chance at it tomorrow, starting from 1 spot further down the grid. Van Halen, Fred Pordat in third, but winners in Pro-Am. And we see the teams now replacing the drivers in the results. Shout out as well to J.C. Sada and Conrad Grunwald doing a great job in the AF Corsa Ferrari, 8th overall in the Am Class winners, somewhat by default, admittedly, but mixing it up with some of the Pro-Am cars throughout the course of the race. There's the celebration down in the most coveted piece of real estate around this racetrack. And I think Amanda is standing by to talk with our race winners.
Andrea, you kicked off the effort that gets the first win here in the Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS. You have dominated here this weekend. How are you doing it?
Well, I don't know. Just a good job with the team, honestly. It's just we kept focusing on the car, and we were quite good confident that we were very confident the car was good. And we just really just made a good lap this morning in quali, and also the pace was very good in the race. So yeah, I'm really happy. Also because Jordan at the end did really a good job after the restart. So it was good. Very happy.
All right, well, I'm going to keep a little distance with Jordan. Jordan, congratulations on the win here. You'll be first in the seat tomorrow. How can you parlay your win here into success tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it was quite key. Like Andrea said, we're working on the car really hard all season, all pre-season and stuff like that, and the car was really good. But it was the first real race situation we've been with the Lamborghini with this team, because it's obviously their first outing with Lamborghini. So lots of lessons to be learned, and hopefully we can make the car a little bit easier to drive. And I think what made it quite difficult as well was with the long safety car, with the pickup. It's quite difficult, yeah. So great result for the team, 1-2. That's obviously what we aim to do, and let's hope we can repeat it all season.
Gentlemen, congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
Now, they went a long way to establishing themselves as favorites. There's Dakota Dickerson and Taylor Hagler sharing some thoughts. Taylor had the opening stint, kept them in the mix, and Dakota Dickerson ultimately did lose his spot to Ryan Dial, but still brings that car home between a couple of veterans, Dial and Colin Brown. Not a bad debut here in GT3 machinery for Dakota Dickerson, and I'm sure a lot of lessons learned that can be applied looking ahead to race 2 tomorrow.
Well, I think a number of teams and driver partnerships will go back, and just even listening to race winner Jordan Pepper saying, we need to do more work on the car. Again, interesting comment that after the long safety car intervention and the pickup, the rubber that's around the racetrack picking up on the tires, that has an effect on how you restart.
Looks like our Pro-Am winners are standing by with Amanda now.
Oh, and they are so excited, Ryan and Fred. I'm going to start with you. You come off of the AM Championship last year. You get your first win of the season right here in Sonoma. How's this for a start?
Well, I couldn't think of a better way to start, actually. It was we didn't know what to expect going in. We know the competition's really stiff, but we had our opportunities and a little bit of misfortune for a couple other teams, and we capitalized, and I'm very happy with where we are. It's going to be tough to stay up here, so we have our work cut out for us for the rest of the season, but looking forward to it.
Jan Compass Racing did have those difficulties. How did you capitalize on their miscue?
Well, I think that's exactly it. We're here to win a championship, or to try and win a championship, and today was a good start. Full points, and maybe weren't the quickest car out there, but we sure did. Everybody just did their job, and we got the points, so great job for the team.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a pairing to keep an eye on, and again, a very experienced Porsche team, Wright Motorsports. They've been running these 911s, whether it's Cup cars or GT3 cars, for a very long time. These two have worked together for quite a while. Definitely a pairing that will need to be reckoned with over the course of this season. Interesting, though, that a single-car team is able to come to the fore. There's several multi-car teams racing in this series, but they were able to take advantage. Let's look at our GT World Challenge America points manufacturers standings. And keep in mind, this is not just GT World Challenge America, but also the Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS Global Championship. No Audi on site, but you can see Porsche scored big here today. Lamborghini did as well. Mercedes-AMG, BMW, and Ferrari rounding out the top 5. This will continue throughout the course of 2021, not just here in the States, but also in championships in Europe, Australia, and Asia. Back down to the pits in Victory Lane, I should say, and Amanda.
Well, Conrad, you bring the Ferrari underneath the checkered flag. It's amazing that you guys made it back to the track. How proud of you are you of your team?
The team did an amazing job. They were here almost 3 o'clock last night putting the car back together. It was a big fix. The car was perfect today. AF Courses obviously has a lot of experience, setting these cars up. So we, showed up for qualifying, and it was perfect. And it's a good race. My teammate Jean-Claude, who's almost here, he did an amazing job of bringing the car back in one piece and staying out of trouble. And here we are. Couldn't be happier.
Congratulations.
Thanks a lot.
Congratulations indeed, and well deserved. Here's the start of this race, and oh man, it was a wild start. How about that? Rodrigo Salas going 3 wide on the initial green to start the season, but Andrea Caldarelli taking advantage of pole position to pull away and take the lead. This was the first time up the hill in turn 3 and down the hill to 4. And Corey Lewis in hot pursuit, but that's about as close as anyone was going to be. Here's trouble a little bit further back. George Kurtz goes around courtesy of a tap from his teammate David Askew. Battling further back with Michael Dinan and Frank Gannett going side by side on the front straight. Dinan fully in that Turner BMW had a good run going until something went wrong late. They ultimately finished in 9th. Big moment of the race here. Matt McMurray, after the pit stop, lost the left rear tire in the carousel. That would bring out a full course yellow. Subsequent restart bunched the field back up again. Jordan Pepper had taken over from Andrea Caldarelli and pulled away on the restart. Meanwhile, battle further back around the outside. Ryan Dial gets it done past Dakota Dickerson. That ended up being for second in Pro-Am. This, though, was a huge moment, too, and probably what sent the day going wrong for the Turner car. Never recovered from that contact. Up front, though, it was all K-Pax Racing, a 1-2 finish. Andrea Caldarelli and Jordan Pepper teaming up to take the victory here at Sonoma Raceway. Celebrations, well, not too deep into the night tonight because we have to do it all over again tomorrow. What a race it was, John Watson. A pleasure to have you on the call with me, and I'm very excited to see what tomorrow has in store.
Well, I'm looking forward to get a good sleep and come back tomorrow. You can see the lights beginning to fade already. The wonderful shadows you get around Sonoma Raceway. Now, well, everybody's having a little chat. Sometimes you'll be with your teammate. Other times you'll bump into other competitors. And this is a moment for teams to reflect and think about what are we going to do. And I'm sure Jordan Pepper is saying to Andrea, we need to work on this car. We need to find a way, if there is more safety car interventions, to deal with this tire pickup issue, and how do we get around it. So those are the details that these two guys will be talking to their team about, as will pretty much everybody that finished this race who went through that safety car intervention.
Let's take a look at the drivers' points following this first race of the season. As you would expect, Andrea Caldarelli and Jordan Pepper at the top, courtesy of the win. This is the pro class, by the way. Unfortunately, Philip Ellis and Russell Ward did not complete enough of the race to be classified, do not earn points. That could be costly in pursuit of a championship over the course of the season. Corey Lewis, Giovanni Venturini, second place as it stands. Want to mention as well, we've talked about it a couple of times just in passing, but it is this year the Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. I'd like to extend a welcome to Fanatec as the sponsor. Podium's now underway. We see the AF Corsa boys going up to celebrate the AM win, Conrad Grunwald and Jean-Claude Sada. But Fanatec, a great partner during the pandemic last year with SRO really branching out into esports, coming on board for the full season, and an esports component coming to the Teams Championship and GT World Challenge Europe this year, which is a cool new wrinkle to things. Great to have Fanatec on board. Here we go with the rest of the podium now. This is Dakota Dickerson, Taylor Hagler, the Racer's Edge car. And coming up next will be Ryan Dial and David Askew. A big recovery here, John, for these two after the penalty on the opening lap for David Askew.
Yes, and Ryan Dial actually, had it not been for that one little error coming into the chicane, may well have found himself actually third overall. But ifs and ands and buts don't count, but nevertheless they'll be delighted with their result. And of course they've got to think forward to Sunday, and no doubt there will be lessons learned. Of course the grid is an entirely different grid to that we had for Saturday's race, so that will give everybody a different perspective. And assuming we've got another gorgeous day as we have today, well, who's going to predict who will maybe not necessarily win but certainly all the other positions in the field will be up for grabs.
Well, to your point about a different grid for tomorrow's race, as we look at the Pro-Am podium there, Jan Halen, Fred Pordad, standing on the top step here today. It is the same K-Pax Racing Lamborghini that will roll off from pole, but Jordan Pepper will start it. But Colin Brown will have the DXDT Racing Mercedes, the 04 car he shares with George Kurtz. Did not have a good run today, but a really good chance to bounce back coming up tomorrow. They will start second overall and on the Pro-Am pole, splitting the two K-Pax Lamborghinis. It will be Giovanni Venturini starting third tomorrow, where the Wright Motorsports duo, the winners in Pro-Am here today, they start fourth overall, second in class, with Jan Halen getting the opening stint for tomorrow's race. Then you have the other DXDT car, Ryan Dial. Dakota Dickerson will start sixth for Racer's Edge. So it's all mixed up tomorrow. No way that we can look at today's race and say definitively this is how it's going to play out in race number 2. And who knows, another safety car intervention at a strange time, and we could really have quite a race on our hands.
Well, I think what was interesting as we look, you want to go through those points there as well, Ryan, because that's the Pro-Am Championship.
Yeah, Pro-Am class leaders after this, of course, your race winners, Fred Pordad and Jan Halen, David Askew, Ryan Dial, Dakota Dickerson, and Taylor Hagler, Colin Brown, George Kurtz, Aaron Vogel, Michael Cooper. That's your top 5 in the Pro-Am standings. Well, that was a fun opening race to start the Fanatec GT World Challenge America powered by AWS season, and we'll do it all over again tomorrow.